Okay, so we're going to be starting off with the mouth first. So the line I'm sketching out kind of really lightly and rough is that center line where the two lips meet. And it's not a perfectly straight line. It looks kind of like a little bit of a curve to it, and there's like two hills where the two lips meet and where the upper lip is in particular. And the bottom and the top lip are different. They're not exactly the same. The bottom lip is usually more curved, and it's also usually a little bit fuller than the upper lip, although it depends on the person too. So the upper lip kind of echoes that kind of bump that you saw in the first step of this drawing, where you're drawing them where the two lips meet, that line, and it tucks down. It looks almost like two hills. So I'm just trying to figure out the spacing on the nose. And I've drawn a line kind of bisecting the mouth, the lips, because I want to make sure that the lips and the nose align. It would be really awkward if the nose were off center, because we are bisymmetrical people, are their faces. So what happens on one side happens on the other side, and you want to make sure that they're equal. And having a guideline like what I've just drawn is really helpful to make sure that the features are all aligned up. So the nose is a little bit tricky. You have to think of it in terms more of value than of line. There are a couple of spots where there's line. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm drawing the nostrils. So those nostrils are like caves or holes. So they are going to be the darkest area in that nose typically. And I draw them kind of like they're candy canes on their side. So a knocked over candy cane. But it's going to depend on the point of view. And then there's cartilage on the outside of your nose wrapping around your nostril. And those kind of look like brackets. They're bracketing the nose. And then your nose is the feature that sticks out farthest from your face. And it's got this little point at the end of it, almost like a little kid's rubber ball, like one of those bouncy balls. So each nose has a little bit of prominence right on the tip. So that's what I've outlined really lightly there. It looks kind of like a stop sign. That's to help me to remind me that that's going to be a light value there. And again, I'm drawing in with line, but really that line's going to disappear, and that's going to be all done with shading, with value. So I'm just making sure those features look correct before I go on to the shading. So I'm getting the curve on the edge of the nostril a little bit more, so you see more of it. And here's where I start to shade with the pencil. So on the lips, it's usually the top lip that is slightly darker than the bottom. And it's because your bottom lip sticks out farther, so it's catching more of the light. All right, so you've toned the top lip. Now you're going to be giving a tone to the bottom lip. And it's using the same pencil, I'm just changing the pressure on it so it's not as dark as the top lip. And it's a little bit exaggerated at this stage. In between the lips, I'm putting a little bit of a shadow there. There's going to be a shadow where the two lips meet because they're touching and then they're casting a shadow on each other. And you have to keep in mind that the lips, they're not sitting on a flat face. The face is curved, like a sphere or like an egg. So they're kind of like sitting on this egg shape kind of sphere. So you have to keep that in mind. So there's some things you can do to make it look like they're not flattened, that they're attached to a face that is a sphere. So part of how you do that is darkening the corners of the mouth and letting the middle part of the mouth be lighter. You can also think of a cylinder. A cylinder does that too, where it's darker on the side, lighter in the center, back to a darker shade, depending on the lighting. So again, you can see on the corners of the mouth, it's darker. And there's a little bit of shading, like on the top, right in that like V section, there's a little bit of shading, but it's mostly in the corners of the mouth. And you're going to do that both to the top and to the bottom. So this is in the corners of the mouth on the bottom lip, so same kind of thing. Getting a little bit of the cast shadow that's being thrown from that top lip there. And you can get into getting all the little creases on the lips if you want to. Sometimes that can be distracting, or it can be like too much detail. But it's kind of up to you if you want to go that far with it. So here the lips are looking softer. They're looking more like they're starting to wrap around that form. So just getting a little bit more value on those lips. Going a little bit to the edge of the mouth too. Okay, so now we're getting in the cast shadow that's just below the lower lip. So often there's some kind of cast shadow, it depends on the lighting, but your lower lip sticks out. So that makes like a little porch, kind of, and it's casting a shadow below onto like just below the lip. Although your chin kind of juts out, so that blocks the cast shadow from going too far. But you will have a little cast shadow there. And you want it to look natural. You don't want it to look like the person has a beard. So remember, this is a cast shadow right below the lower lip. And that cast shadow is going to have a little bit of a harder edge than, let's say, a form shadow. So that shadow is being created by the lower lip sticking farther out, and it's blocking the light hitting just below the lower lip. So darkening those cast shadows a little bit. There's a little bit of cast shadows going on in the lips where the two lips are meeting. So each lip itself is like kind of like a cylinder or a tube. You have to think of that too. You want it to look fully 3D, not like a cartoon. It's just adding a little bit more shadow into the bottom lip there. And that's form shadow. So it's the soft shadow. So here I'm taking my eraser and erasing out some of the highlights. There are highlights on lips. They're not as intense as what you'd see on the eye, but they are there. There are highlights on every feature depending on the lighting. So we are going to be shading the skin around the lips and around the nose so that it looks like they're actually attached to a face and not just these floating features. And most lips have kind of a divot, like this indentation right above your upper lip. It almost looks like railroad tracks, except for there's no like horizontal beams. And they kind of lead up towards your nose. On some people, it's just more obvious than on others. And just keep in mind, when we're doing these features, these are generic features. Everyone's features are slightly different. There's lots of things that can affect someone's features, their gender, their ethnicity, and just personal quirks. So you always have to pay attention to who you're drawing and draw an individual, not just a generalization. Okay, so lightly toning, creating some kind of skin tone. And you can see I'm just blocking it in. It's not really neat at this stage. That's okay. I'm creating some kind of tone. And there's where you can see kind of the indentation more a little bit, where that in between the two like mountain peaks on the lip, upper lip, there's those lines that lead up to the nose. So we're getting close here. Almost to the point where we can work on the nose. I think I'm going in with a little darker pencil there just to darken up some of the darks.